Amazing. Millionaire discovers touching secret. After little girl shocks him with hidden request. Jack Morgan stood under the bright lights of the community center, a world away from the polished boardrooms of Denver's high-rises. His tall, broad frame felt oddly out of place, surrounded by the hum of families and children. The laughter, the connections, none of it was familiar to him. A faint sense of unease twisted in his gut like a knot. He wasn't sure if he could mask the discomfort any longer. Success had always been his only language, a solitary road paved with relentless ambition. He was a millionaire, but in this moment, in this crowd, he felt like an imposter. As he scanned the room, his eyes flicked towards her, a scrappy 10-year-old girl with curls bouncing as she nibbled on what looked like a sugar-coated muffin. She stood at the edge, nervous, yet intrigued. Jack couldn't fathom why a child would intrigue him, but as she approached, determination sparked in her gaze. "Can you help save my family's farm?" she asked, her voice rising like a falcon mid-flight. The request landed heavy on his chest, almost choking him. His instinct was to deflect, to dismiss her. Wasn't this just another fleeting plea for charity? Yet as Emily shared tales of her family's struggles, he began to feel an unsettling pressure. Her voice was vivid with hope, her stories vibrant with need, and they tugged at something buried deep within him. His thoughts wandered, unearthing echoes of childhood memories. Nights spent alone, the silence of an empty home. The darkness of neglect loomed, reminding him that he had sacrificed connection for success. No, he couldn't let this affect him. After all, Emily's dreams were quaint. Families were always looking for help and handouts. Yet beneath that facade of resilience lay a shocking revelation. Her great-grandfather had been a close friend of Jack's late father, a man whose loss still haunted Jack's every ambition. This connection stirred a tempest within him. His heart raced. Could it be that this child's vulnerability was a reflection of his own buried pain? Caught between a yearning to reject vulnerability and a pull to discover hidden truths, Jack's mind whirled. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant about an imminent business deal flickered across the screen, one that could obliterate the farm Emily cherished. The weight of his reality pressed down on him like coarse steel. If he allowed himself to help her, he could risk everything he'd ever strived for. The tug-of-war raged, leaving him feeling cornered, a prisoner of his design. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jack's breath quickened as Emily, oblivious to his internal turmoil, shared intricate details about her family's hopes for that farm, the plans for a community garden that would sustain livelihoods. With every word she spoke, it became clear that the stakes were higher than mere business. A boy pressed against a grocery store doorframe flooded back into his mind, a desperate face asking for something more than just money. Guilt swelled within him, yet he fought against it, veering towards pragmatism. The clock ticked, echoing in his ears, untangling the thread of indecision. He was on the precipice. The impending decision could define not just a business path, but the very essence of who he was. Could he step into the unknown? Could he make a choice that challenged everything he believed? Just then, as Emily looked at him with wide, hopeful eyes full of potential, a sudden notification pierced through his haze. His business partner had pulled out of the deal. The ground seemed to shift beneath his feet, throwing everything into chaos. Jack felt the walls close in, the isolation press harder as he grappled with the uncertainty that now surrounded their fates. The future of Emily's farm wasn't just compromised, it was now interwoven with his own sense of identity, and the clock was ticking. Jack's mind raced as chaos unfolded around him. He could sense the gravity of the moment, a pivotal juncture where he had to decide whether to follow the path paved with cold ambition or dare to tread into the warmth of human connection. The flicker of uncertainty ignited a deep urgency within him. He needed clarity. He glanced at Emily again, her small fingers fiddling with the edge of her dress, a mirror of his own frayed nerves. Her youthful optimism contrasted sharply with the disdainful world of corporate takeovers he swam in daily. He could almost hear the resounding echoes from that neglected boy's plea bouncing around in his mind. Had life reduced him to this? A heartless titan bereft of empathy? Shaking off the onslaught of self-loathing, Jack attempted to push back against the rising tide of vulnerability. But with every heartbeat, the walls he had meticulously built around his emotions began to crack. He thought of his father, the man whose legacy he had spent years molding into an empire. Yet the irony hit like a sudden gust of wind. What good was a vast fortune if he felt hollow inside? The notification still flashed on his phone, insistent and nagging. His business partner had chosen self-preservation over ambition, leaving Jack facing a void. How could he negotiate a deal now that had been rooted in a betrayal of trust? The markets were astir, commodities would plunge, investors would wail. But all of that paled under the thought of a little girl losing her family's legacy. What was he truly saving, money or a dream? "Mr. Morgan?" Emily's voice cut through the fog of his thoughts, pulling him from the brink of paralyzation. Her eyes, glimmering with hope, pierced through his uncertainty, and he could see in them the resilience that had been drilled into him as a young boy. Or was it the resilience he had neglected in pursuit of merciless goals? Jack stepped back, both literally and figuratively. He rubbed the back of his neck, reluctant to commit to an answer, knowing the gravity of his decision could resonate beyond himself. "What would you do if I said yes?" The question felt daring, almost reckless. Emily's face lit up, her earlier hesitance affronted by excitement. "I'd make sure the farm thrived. We could plant new crops and have a mini market. Everyone could help out, and I'd make sure to do my part." A surge of warmth filled him as he absorbed her vision. A simple, pure notion of existence devoid of corporate cynicism. Beneath all the noise, Jack found himself smiling, a crack in the armor that had served him diligently for years. Doubt fought back viciously. "And what if, Emily interrupted, her voice more assertive now. "What if it doesn't succeed? What if it does? Wouldn't you rather know?" Her words hit Jack like a splash of ice water, jarring, piercing. For the first time, he felt something akin to hope mixed with fear. His instincts to retreat battled against the intoxicating allure of courage. Helping Emily was not just about the farm. It was about picking up the pieces of his own shattered identity. As he turned to look out through the building's windows, the vast expanse of the fields came into view, swaying beneath the sun's glow. He could see the potential flourishing in the landscape, a reflection of what might emerge within himself if he allowed it to be nurtured. The phone buzzed again, but Jack ignored it. His decision became clear. He needed to embrace this connection, risk the unraveling of his carefully structured life to explore something profoundly valuable. With unexpected resolve, he faced Emily. "Let's save your family's farm." Her eyes danced with disbelief and joy, a charming innocence puncturing his hardened facade. But just as a flood of relief washed over him, another notification blinked ominously on his phone, revealing a last-minute message from a rival company aiming to capitalize on the chaos of his failed deal. The corner of Jack's mind stirred with unease, a new threat emerging just as he thought he had made a choice. Uncertain of the storm brewing ahead, Jack asked himself, had he sealed his fate by attempting to embrace vulnerability, or could this be the start of a journey to rediscover what truly mattered? The stakes had shifted yet again, and with that realization, Jack felt the tension coiling tighter, leaving him on edge as he faced the impending battle about to unfurl in both business and self-discovery. Jack stood at the window, the golden light spilling over the fields and bathing him in warmth, but the shadows of his corporate world were still clinging to him. He felt like a tightrope walker, balancing precariously between ambition and the possibility of genuine connection. Emily's hopeful enthusiasm filled him with a flicker of comfort, a sharp contrast to the anxiety brewing in his chest. Yet, the new notification on his phone loomed over him like a storm cloud. He took a deep breath, wrestling with the choice he'd just made with Emily. Helping her save the farm seemed simple, but the reality of his decision weighed heavily. In that moment, he understood that the next steps would not just shape the trajectory of the farm, but also the very essence of who he was becoming. "I can't let this distract me," Jack muttered to himself, quickly dismissing the phone. He turned to Emily. "We need a plan." Her face fell for a moment, the exuberance fading as he spoke those words. But then, determination flickered in her eyes once again. "What kind of plan?" "We need to assess the farm, see where we can improve right away. And we'll need to reach out to people, bring the community together." He felt the tightness in his chest ease a little as he spoke. It was a small but monumental shift. Working with Emily on something meaningful was reigniting a spark he thought had long faded. "But what about the money? We need funds to make all this happen," she exclaimed, her youthful exuberance almost tangible. "What if it doesn't work out?" Jack paused, contemplating the very real fear that clung to them. What if it does? He echoed her earlier words back to her, surprising even himself. The thrill that surged through him was unusual, yet invigorating. He realized that the stakes were no longer defined simply by financial loss or gain. They were rooted in nurturing something larger than himself, a chance to revive more than just the land. "In that case," Emily suggested, a hint of mischief sparkling in her eyes, "let's start a fundraiser. People in the community would love to help. I can ask my friends and family." Jack's lips curled into a smile. The energy radiating from her seemed infectious, and for the first time in ages, he felt a sense of camaraderie. "Exactly," he agreed, his mind racing. "We could host an event, perhaps a harvest festival." "Harvest festival?" Emily echoed, her excitement bursting forth anew. "Like one of those big fairs with food and games? We could showcase the farm's produce and bring in local musicians." Jack's thoughts spiraled. It would take work, lots of it. Doubt crept in again. Could he really handle this while also keeping his professional life intact? But the thought of slipping back into his old self felt far scarier than failure. "Let's make a list," he said, forcing commitment back into his voice. "We'll outline what we need and start reaching out to local businesses for sponsorships." As they worked together, scribbling ideas on paper, Jack noticed the way Emily's passion illuminated their plans. He felt himself reinvesting in optimism, gradually pushing past the suffocating need for perfection that had governed his life. This was not just about saving the farm. It was about rediscovering joy in collaboration, in purpose. Just then the phone buzzed again, a sharp jolt of reality cutting through their enthusiasm. Jack glanced at the screen, dreading what he might see. It was a message from his rival, laying claim to the very market he was trying to salvage. The moment hung suspended. Could he truly balance this budding partnership with Emily and fend off an impending conflict that threatened his career? Clenching the phone, Jack met Emily's curious eyes. "Remember what you said? What if it works? This is our what-if moment, and I can't let anything stand in the way." The weight of that conviction forged a new kind of resolve within him, but there were still many hurdles to overcome. Would he have the strength to face his adversaries while nurturing this fragile relationship? As Jack clenched his fists, both fear and determination roiling within him, he sensed the impending storm of confrontation on the horizon. He had begun to reclaim his humanity, but the battle was only just beginning, both for the farm and for his own soul. Jack's hands trembled on the edge of the table as he stared at the message again, its implications widening the chasm of uncertainty inside him. He felt like he was teetering on the edge of a cliff, the ground crumbling away beneath him. His mind raced as he contemplated the implications of the challenge posed by his rival, a seasoned strategist who was known for pouncing on weakness. Jack had spent years honing his business acumen, but this was different. It was personal. "Are you okay?" Emily's voice cut through the fog of his thoughts, her expression a mix of concern and encouragement. With an effort, he lowered the phone, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just a bit overwhelmed." She nodded, leaving the question unasked, but he saw the flicker of understanding. The battle ahead was not merely professional. It threatened the new emotional investment he had started to build with her, an investment he still struggled to believe could have benefits beyond the immediate. "That rivalry of yours, it's not just business, right?" She prodded gently, clearly trying to gauge where he stood. "No," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's complicated. It feels like a reflection of my own fears." Jack's shoulders sagged under the weight of honesty. creating space for vulnerability to seep in. He had been so tightly wound, focused on outcomes dictated by his corporate world, that he hadn't acknowledged how deeply personal this fight had become. Emily, wise beyond her years, leaned forward. Maybe this will be the opportunity to really show who you are, Jack. You're more than that business suit you used to wear. Her words sliced through his self-doubt like a warm knife through butter. Could he truly redefine his identity? The realization began to dawn. This was a chance for him to break free from the cycle of fear that had suffocated his aspirations. You're right, he said, the resolve building in his chest. I need to think differently about how I approach this. We should focus on the strengths of the farm, she suggested, her eyes lighting up with excitement. What if we bring the best of what we can offer to the front instead of worrying about the competition? He hesitated, caught between a craving for validation and the burgeoning ambition ignited by Emily's unwavering belief in their vision. You think we can even compete? I believe we can. You're capable of so much more than you think, she affirmed. Let's build something that appeals to our local community. Something authentic. Imagining an event where they showcased not just the produce but the stories of those who tended the land ignited a fire in his gut. I could tell our story, our journey, how we've risen from struggles, he proposed, the idea swelling within him. Exactly, Emily replied, her enthusiasm palpable. This is about us connecting with people, not just selling tomatoes. It's about creating a legacy. Jack's heart raced as he recognized the path opening up before him. What he had perceived as limitations were, in truth, potential avenues for collaboration and expression. Alone, he would falter, but together with Emily, there was strength beyond their immediate resources. But even as excitement bubbled, a shadow of tension gripped him. His rival wouldn't simply stand by and watch. Jack experienced a quickening of his pulse as he contemplated the inevitable confrontation. He needed to prepare not just his plans for the farm, but also his defenses against the looming threat. Let's set up regular meetings, adjust our strategies as we go, he suggested, his voice steadier now. I'll draw up a list of our unique selling points, and you can help outline the narrative we want to share. Emily beamed at him, that contagious energy fueling their partnership. We're in this together. As they exchanged ideas, Jack felt a rush of clarity, each thought crystallizing into actionable strategies. Yet beneath this newfound resolve, a nagging question lingered. How would his rival respond to his renewed vigor? The storm was brewing, and he needed to brace himself for the brickbats of competition that lay ahead. The thought sent a chill down his spine. There was still the price to pay for pursuing this path. Would he find the strength to confront adversaries with the same passion he had ignited within himself? As those doubts swirled, the phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up with the name that had become a harbinger of dread. With a deep breath, Jack prepared to face whatever came next, knowing he stood on the precipice of both turmoil and transformation. The stakes had never been higher, and he had never felt more alive, or more afraid. The moment had arrived for him to confront not just his rival, but the truth about everything he had been avoiding. Would he rise to the occasion or retreat back into the shadows of self-doubt? Jack felt a tingle of trepidation as he tapped away at his phone, the message from his rival glaring at him like a warning sign. Dread coiled in his stomach, yet he knew he couldn't afford to ignore the challenge or dismiss the threat it posed. He was no longer a passive player. Emily's encouragement resonated deep within him, stirring a resolve he hadn't fully acknowledged before. He quickly crafted a response, half-formed ideas pouring out as his fingers flew over the screen. You think you can intimidate me? This isn't just business, it's personal, and I'm just getting started. Hit send. The act felt empowering, and for the first time in a long while, he felt his heart race not from fear, but from a fierce determination to reclaim the narrative. What now? Emily asked, observing his sudden intensity. Now we innovate, Jack replied, his voice steadier than he felt. It's time to define who we are without getting bogged down by who they are. Clarity surged through him. He needed to reverse the dialogue from fear to strength. As they dissected their plans for the farm, a sense of clarity enveloped him. They were not bound by tradition or the burdens of past mistakes, but could create an authentic story of resilience and renewal. Each idea they bounced off one another built a tangible connection, anchoring him further from uncertainty. They discussed how to showcase the heritage of the land, intertwining it with personal anecdotes and community ties. But even as every moment of collaboration solidified their plan, Jack instinctively checked his phone for any updates. His rival's name loomed like an ever-present shadow, sowing seeds of doubt that flickered at the edges of his newfound resolve. "Step back for a moment," Emily urged as she caught him eyeing his phone again. "You're important to this process, but if you're focused on him, you'll miss what we can create together." Her words drove home something Jack had avoided confronting. The real battle wasn't just with his rival, but also within himself. He had been so consumed by external pressures that he lost sight of what truly mattered. What kind of leader did he want to be? Did he want to mirror his rival's fierce ruthlessness, or could he carve out a unique identity rooted in integrity? "Okay, you're right," he conceded, the truth weighing heavily on him. "What if we come up with our terms? Our marketing doesn't need to mimic his style." "What does that look like?" Emily asked, her gaze unwavering. He envisioned a visual campaign steeped in narrative, a blend of genuine storytelling, community engagement, and showcasing their dedication to sustainable practices. It was clear they would not only offer products, but forge connections, which opposed the cold transactional nature of his rival's approach. The idea excited him. It resonated with a piece of himself he had buried too deep. Hours turned to days, and as Jack immersed himself in the work, he found himself grappling with unexpected insecurities. What if he miscalculated? What if it failed? But with every self-doubt, he leaned on the partnership he forged with Emily, jotting down ideas and brainstorming strategies that seemed almost tangible. However, the moment of truth arrived quicker than he anticipated. He received an invitation to a local business summit, a space where he would face his rival in person, where the stakes felt higher than ever. The weight of it hit him hard. It sent ripples of anxiety through his determined facade. "Jack, are you all right?" Emily sensed the shift in his energy. "I'm just processing. This summit, it puts us in direct competition. What if I choke in front of everyone?" "You won't," she reaffirmed, her confidence unwavering. "You're stepping into this with purpose. Whether you win or lose, it's a step towards growth." Her faith in him sparked a flicker of renewal against his gnawing fears. But another question loomed ominously. How could he channel this newfound courage into action? As he prepared for the summit, Jack was thrust into a crucible of self-examination. Who was he becoming? The ambitious entrepreneur capable of defying his fears, or a hesitant shadow haunted by a rival's reputation? In the tumult of these decisions, one truth crystallized. This was not merely about the summit, but the man he would choose to become. With the date approaching, Jack faced uncertainty and exhilaration, aware of the consequences ahead. The moment had arrived to confront not only his rival but himself, seismic shifts reverberating throughout his very core. And just as he embraced the fear, a notification chimed yet again, a message from his rival, raising the stakes even higher. How Jack would respond to this challenge would ultimately define not just the outcome of the summit, but the essence of who he was becoming. Could he truly step into the arena with confidence, ready to face everything that came with it? Jack stared at the screen, the words of his rival twisting the knot in his stomach tighter. "You're either brave or foolish to think you can take me on. I'm looking forward to seeing the mess you make at the summit." For a moment, doubt clouded his resolve. Was he truly ready to step into the arena with his vulnerabilities exposed? But something flickered deep within him. Maybe this was the very challenge he needed to push himself beyond what he believed he was capable of. He forced a breath, expelling the anxiety pooling inside. Each inhale steadied him, each exhale releasing the fear. It wasn't just about proving himself. It was about taking ownership of his narrative without allowing past insecurities to cloud his vision. Days turned into a mental maze as Jack roamed through strategies. The summit's agenda buzzed in his mind like a swarm of bees, endlessly stinging him with reminders of what was at stake. He and Emily had curated their presentation meticulously, highlighting storytelling through visuals that illustrated the impact of their sustainable methods and their connection to the land. But would that be enough to counter the slick, calculated charm of his rival? Emily's encouragement rang in his ears. "You have something they don't. Authenticity. Don't underestimate the strength in that. She was right. The challenge was more than the rivalry itself. It was about reclaiming his own voice and crafting a legacy that echoed with truth. With the summit looming large on the horizon, Jack began to throw himself into preparation. Each rehearsal echoed not into the void, but towards Emily's supportive gaze, reminding him of the weight of their work together. Every time he spoke, he buried the self-doubt a little deeper, choosing instead to visualize success, a stark contrast to previous attempts, where he had faltered under pressure. Instead of forcing the images of his rival's condescending smirk or the anxious crowd, Jack crafted scenes woven with empowerment and confidence. He imagined standing at the podium, radiating conviction, articulating their vision with clarity. The sentiment swelled within him, a shield against the inevitable intimidation he felt creeping into the back of his mind. Then an unexpected wave of reflection seized him. As he stood before his mirror, rehearsing his lines yet again, he caught a glimpse of the man staring back. Who was this emerging figure? A mixture of past uncertainties and present resolve. He wasn't just preparing for a business summit. He was preparing to reveal himself in a way he'd long avoided. What if this event was less about rivalry and more about self-discovery? Holding on to that thought sparked the kind of fire he needed. If he could lean into this new version of himself, perhaps he could manage to reshape their narrative, one genuine connection at a time. Days passed in a blur of intense focus, and finally the morning of the summit dawned, bright but heavy with expectation. Jack's heart raced as he stood surrounded by anxious attendees and industry enthusiasts. The air crackled with tension, but there, at the edge of the crowd, stood Emily, her presence a grounding certainty amidst the chaos. It was a moment of confrontation, not just against his rival, but with all the fears he had been harboring. This is it, he told himself, clenching his fists. As he walked toward the stage, each footfall echoed the resolve he began to cultivate within. When he reached the podium, the faces before him blurred, but Emily's unwavering encouragement illuminated his thoughts. Cocooned in this moment, everything they had worked for reverberated in his mind. "Now it's just us," he murmured, taking a deep breath, ready to unleash the truth within him. But before he could fully embrace the moment, the distinct blare of a phone cut through the atmosphere, jolting him. His heart dropped as he glanced at the notification. Another message from his rival, teasingly reminding him of the stakes involved and taunting him to falter. Jack recognized it as a tactic designed to disrupt, but instead of crumbling, something clicked in him. This was not merely about facing a rival at this summit. It was also about confronting every doubt that had ever held him back. As he went to speak, the weight of uncertainty transformed. Jack felt liberated, ready for whatever was to come, both from within and from the rival waiting in the shadows. What he didn't know was just how fierce the confrontation ahead would prove to be. The summit promised to unveil not just his professional destiny, but would also lay bare the depths of his resolve and character, in ways he couldn't yet fathom. Could he emerge victorious, or would he unravel under the pressure of expectation? As Jack cleared his throat, his heart pounding, a wave of anticipation washed over him. The chatter of the crowd turned to a muted hum, their eyes fixed on him, each one a reminder of the moment he had envisioned countless times. The message from his rival lingered in the background, a taunting echo he chose to silence. "Thank you for being here," he began, the words flowing more easily than he expected. "I stand before you, not just as a representative of my company, but as someone who believes in the transformative power of authenticity." With every syllable, Jack reaffirmed his thoughts from the mirror. This was his chance to speak his truth. The audience shifted, drawn in by a mixture of curiosity and surprise. He wasn't just reciting rehearsed lines. He was weaving a narrative, threading moments of vulnerability and resolve through the fabric of their joint vision. He spoke of sustainable practices grounded in the connection between humanity and nature, of hope that sprang from shared journeys. Yet as his story unfolded, the specter of his rival loomed larger. Each time he paused for emphasis, he felt the weight of judgment from the back of the room. This was not merely an exposition of ideas, it was a battle of wills. With a flash of confidence, he glanced towards where he knew his rival would be. Sure enough, the man sat smugly, arms crossed, a sardonic smile plastered on his face. In that moment, Jack recognized the urgency of his mission. But the more he spoke, the more he realized the true nature of the confrontation. It was about far more than a single presentation. It was a challenge to his identity and the legacy he wished to forge. Questions surged within him. Had he truly embraced his purpose? Was he willing to stand firm against critique? Sensing that he had the audience's attention, he pivoted. While my opponent presents innovation as a slick package, I offer a genuine connection to the land, a partnership with the environment forged through respect. Each word felt like a pushback against the creeping self-doubt. This is not just business for us, it's a way of life. He paused, looking into the faces of the audience, searching for signs of resonance. Jack recalled Emily's words. Authenticity held power. It wasn't merely a battleground he faced, but was also an arena for enlightenment, both for himself and for those listening. With newfound determination, he decided to share a personal story from his childhood, a recollection of planting seeds with his father. Those moments were marked by patience, growth, and the understanding that you can't rush nature, nor can you push authenticity. It takes time, care, and the right conditions to flourish. A connection crackled between him and the crowd. They leaned in, intrigued. Then came the critical juncture. He felt a surge of vulnerability, but stood firm. This was a test of his resilience. This is where my rival and I diverge. Where he sees profits, I see potential relationships. Where he emphasizes shortcuts, I find value in slow growth. Jack's voice softened, wrapping his final words in honesty. Let's cultivate an environment together where our children will thrive, grounded not in profit margins but in shared responsibility. Applause surged through the room, overpowering his racing thoughts. Jack's heart lightened with each clap, yet his rival's undercurrent of disdain lurked just beyond the spotlight, transforming into a palpable tension that hung in the air. As Jack concluded, he felt a deep-seated realization settle in. Victory wasn't solely about defeating his rival, but about defeating the doubts that had followed him for too long. As the audience buzzed with discussion, an internal shift had taken place within Jack. He might very well have altered the course of his trajectory. But as he stepped down from the stage, exhilaration gave way to reflection. Would his rival retaliate? And what impact would his words have on the crowd's perception? Jack knew this was merely the beginning of a confrontation that extended beyond the podium, into the very fabric of his being. The storm within him stirred. What would come next? He wondered, feeling both alive and vulnerable. He headed toward Emily, ready to share the moment, but still acutely aware of the challenge that awaited him beyond their dialogue. The stakes were now not just professional but deeply personal. His sense of self was on the line, and the night held endless possibilities. He could still hear the taunts, echoing like distant thunder, waiting for their chance to crash down. As he turned to find Emily's reassuring gaze, he felt the pulse of hesitation still thrumming in his chest. The next chapter of this journey beckoned, and he was ready to face whatever storm arose. As Jack approached Emily, he could sense the charged atmosphere in the room. Applause still lingered in the air, yet the excitement felt almost suffocating. He shared his victory with a smile, but underneath it all lay an unsettling layer of worry. What would his rival do next? Would his words resonate, or would they be twisted into a weapon? "Jack, you were incredible," Emily exclaimed as he reached her. Her eyes sparkled with admiration, yet Jack could see a flicker of concern beneath her enthusiasm. He wanted to revel in her support, but anxiety nestled in his thoughts. How would he navigate the aftermath of such a bold declaration? Was he truly ready to stake his identity on authenticity? "Thanks, Emily. It felt right up there," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady despite the tremor of uncertainty threading through him. Her presence provided solace, yet Jack was increasingly aware of the larger battle ahead. The next steps loomed like an unsolvable puzzle, tantalizing yet daunting. He recalled his speech, the way he had pivoted to authenticity, grounding himself in his past. That connection to his father had been an act of courage, But could he maintain that conviction as the stakes increased? He could no longer detach from the piercing scrutiny of his rival, or the audience that had absorbed his words. "Do you think I did enough to change their minds?" Jack asked, his voice a confessional murmur. Emily studied him closely, her brow furrowed. "You planted a seed, Jack, but it takes time. Remember what you said. Authenticity isn't rushed. You'll need to cultivate those relationships through both words and actions." Her insight reignited a spark within him. He had spoken of growth, yet he realized he had not fully committed to being a part of that nurturing process. The mere act of standing up and speaking had been an awakening, but what followed would define his path forward. As conversations swirled around them, Jack's instincts kicked in. To move ahead, he couldn't shy away from confrontation. Setting aside lingering doubts, he approached a small group of his colleagues discussing the presentation. They were clearly divided. Some admired his words, while others lingered in skepticism that mirrored his rival's demeanor. "Could we explore the ideas I presented further?" Jack interjected, his voice stronger than before. "There's potential here, and I want to hear your thoughts. Let's collaborate." He felt vulnerable opening himself to feedback, yet he recognized a critical opportunity to deepen connections. One colleague, a younger woman whose name he struggled to recall, met him with a sharp gaze. "Are you ready to back your words with real change? It can't just be about what was said today. You have to show that you mean it." Jack nodded, his throat tightening as he considered her challenge. "I am ready. Let's draw up a plan, something actionable. I want this to extend beyond ideas." The meeting took shape as he rallied their thoughts into a cohesive dialogue. Ideas ignited like sparks, enthusiasm flowed, tethering each of them to a common purpose. Memories of his childhood, a time when he had felt in harmony with the earth, fueled his resolve. Perhaps he could cultivate a team that shared a vision rooted in those early lessons of patience and care. When the discussion drew to a close, Jack felt a new weight on his shoulders. The tangible task of sustaining those relationships loomed ever larger. He had voiced his ambitions. Now it was time to deliver results. But the looming presence of his rival haunted him, like a shadow that refused to fade. Was he prepared to face any fallout? As the group dispersed with tentative excitement, Jack found Emily again. "They're energized, but are we truly prepared for what's next?" "This is just the beginning," she reassured him, though the intensity underlying her gaze implied lingering doubt. A sense of recognition settled over Jack. He was at a critical crossroads. Certainly he had taken a powerful stand, yet the weight of expectation pressed heavily upon him. He needed to be vigilant, not just for himself, but for those who believed in him. "Let's chart out our next steps," he proposed, internalizing the challenge. "We need to define our clarity of purpose and communicate that clearly." Though determination coursed through him, the underlying question loomed larger than ever. Would this bold undertaking lead to true authenticity or serve merely as a prelude to his collapse? Tension hung thick in the air as Jack watched the crowd begin to disperse. Despite his triumph, an unsettling sense of foreboding clawed at his chest. The journey ahead held both promise and peril, and he was about to discover which would prevail. The real test of his integrity was yet to unfold, and soon enough he would have to confront the lurking rival who awaited his move. The days that followed the presentation felt like a whirlwind, and Jack grappled with the weight of his newfound responsibilities. As he settled into his routine, he felt the scrutiny from peers intensify. Conversations shifted, hesitations emerged, and while some expressed admiration for his bold stance, others remained staunchly critical. Jack decided to convene regular meetings with his colleagues, a small but dedicated team committed to exploring the ideas he had introduced. Each session felt like navigating a ship through a storm. Promising ideas collided with skepticism, and Jack struggled to keep the crew focused on the destination rather than the turbulent waters surrounding them. One evening, as he prepared notes for their next meeting, his phone buzzed with a message from Emily. "Let's grab coffee tomorrow. I have some thoughts that might help you." Her willingness to support him energized his resolve. The next day, they met at a local cafe, the rich aroma of coffee enveloping them. Emily looked pensive as she sipped her drink. "Jack, you have the vision, but vision alone won't change minds. You have to engage those who are unsure. It's time to talk directly to them. Listen, understand, and then lead. Jack nodded, her words piercing his growing cloud of self-doubt. I know, but it's easier said than done. What if they only focus on the negatives? What if my authenticity isn't enough against a polished facade? Emily leaned forward, her gaze piercing, yet encouraging. You're being real, that's your strength. Invite skepticism, don't shy away from it. Acknowledge their doubts, engage them. Open the door for conversations. If you can show vulnerability, you create a connection. Returning to his desk, Jack felt a flicker of excitement tinged with fear. Emily's advice challenged him to step beyond his comfort zone. It was no longer about simply presenting ideas, but rather engaging in dialogue, a true exchange of thoughts and concerns. Fueled by a newfound determination, Jack organized a roundtable discussion, inviting both supporters and critics. He advertised it openly, framing it as a collaborative effort to refine their strategies. The night before the meeting, however, old anxieties crept back, images of his rival lurking at the periphery, waiting for him to falter. When the day arrived, the atmosphere in the room was tense. Colleagues shuffled, whispers filled the air. Jack took a deep breath and opened with vulnerability. Today isn't about me defending my ideas. I want to listen to what you feel, what inspires you, and what causes doubt. He saw brows furrow and expressions shift. The figures around the table didn't respond immediately, weighed down by a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Finally, a colleague broke the silence. You talk about authenticity, but it feels like a buzzword. How can we trust that what you say will translate into genuine change? Jack's heart raced. This was the moment he needed to confront doubt head-on. I understand why you feel that way. Trust is earned. I'm open to hearing how I can prove that I'm serious about this. An unexpected wave of dialogue emerged. Ideas flowed, concerns were voiced, and Jack listened earnestly. What had begun as a daunting confrontation slowly transformed into a collaborative exchange. By the end of the meeting, a strange camaraderie blossomed. Jack felt the tension ease, replaced with a shared thirst for genuine improvement. It didn't matter that some had still held reservations. They were at least willing to engage. As the group began to disperse, Jack felt invigorated. He realized that authenticity wasn't just a shield, it could also be a bridge. Yet amidst this burgeoning sense of progress, shadows of doubt still clouded his mind. What would happen if his rival attacked at this vulnerable moment? Would he be able to withstand the scrutiny? Sitting quietly at his desk after everyone left, Jack re-examined his motivations. Was he truly ready to stand firm and embrace this openness when all he wanted was the comfort of certainty? The air felt thicker now, charged with potential. His commitment to authenticity required more than just talk. It demanded action, resilience, and perhaps the most difficult task of all, embracing potential rejection. And as he pondered the implications of his decisions, a message pinged on his phone, shattering his moment of solitude. It was from Emily. Jack, we need to talk. Your rival is making moves I think you need to know about. Let's strategize. With his heart pounding, he prepared for what lay ahead. The challenge was shifting, and so too was the stakes. Did he have the strength to confront the next wave, or would he retreat into old fears? Jack sat at his desk, a mix of anxiety and resolve weaving through his veins. The conversation with Emily replayed in his mind while a storm of uncertainty brewed around him. The message from her loomed like a specter over his thoughts, reminding him of the remaining hurdles he needed to overcome. When they met, Jack noticed the urgency in Emily's expression. Your rival is positioning himself again, she said, her tone serious. He's grasping at every piece of intel he can find about our initiatives. We need a counterplan, one that showcases not just what we're doing, but why it matters. Jack nodded, recognizing the critical juncture they stood at. Then let's solidify our story. We need to articulate our vision beyond the competitive landscape, something that resonates with people's hearts. Over the next few days, they poured their energy into creating a compelling narrative rooted in authenticity. Jack immersed himself in understanding not only the logistics of their farm's revival, but also the emotional aspects of storytelling. He recounted his childhood memories of planting seeds with his father, emphasizing patience and nurturing. As they polished their presentation for the community, Jack felt growth burgeoning within himself. The fear of inadequacy that once gripped him began to soften. He was finally translating vulnerability into strength. The revision of his approach had forged a deeper network of supporters, and he stood poised to reveal not just a plan, but an essence of purpose that reflected not only his aspirations, but those around him. The day of the community presentation arrived. Jack stood in front of a diverse audience, his heart steady, radiating confidence. He saw familiar faces, neighbors, friends, and new faces, all concerned for the future of the farm. He inhaled deeply, the air thick with possibility. Thank you all for coming. I stand before you representing not just my company, but a commitment to our community. Together, we can create a model of a farm that fosters resilience through sustainability, he began, his voice steady as he wove in the stories that connected him to the crowd. The room pulsed with energy as Jack illustrated their struggles and triumphs. We've faced an uphill battle, but it's time we don't just look inward at our struggles, but extend our hands outward to embrace a shared vision. Together, we can cultivate something extraordinary. As he unveiled their community involvement strategies, ideas projected onto screens behind him, murmurs of excitement filled the auditorium. He concluded with a heartening reflection. What we're building is about legacy. It's about showing our children that growth is not just economic, but intertwined with our values, our relationships, our roots. A palpable sense of connection enveloped the room. He had successfully ignited something remarkable. Jack felt a swell of pride bubble within him, realizing he wasn't merely sharing facts, he was sharing hope. Amidst the discussions and questions that followed, Jack felt the weight of scrutiny around him lessen. Community members voiced excitement and a sense of unity crystallized. For the first time, the very flaws that had haunted him transformed into platforms from which to launch a shared journey. Yet as Jack relished this moment of triumph, the reminder of the rival lurking in the background loomed. A sharp ping from his phone broke his reverie, an incoming message that sent a tremor of apprehension racing down his spine. "Your meeting was impressive, Jack," it began eerily, followed by a display of calculated suggestions for alliances and partnerships that bore the semblance of manipulation. "But I know when someone's bluffing." The air turned thick with tension, uncertainty crackling like static electricity in the air. But instead of retreating into defensiveness, Jack felt the pulse of resolve course through him. He had strived to build bridges, to nurture relationships. He could channel the energy that had fueled his presentation into a strategy of resilience, not just for himself, but for the very legacy he was building. Emily joined him almost instantly, concern evident in her eyes, but pride evident in her stance. "You handled it perfectly, Jack. We're building a foundation. You've already established trust, and that is worth more than a business deal." In that moment, the realization struck him with clarity. He had already achieved something monumental. The shift had transpired not only in his professional circumstances, but within himself. He was no longer just a businessman seeking personal success. He was part of a community, embodying authenticity and connection. Jack stood tall, ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead with newfound courage. The journey was ongoing, but he had crafted an identity grounded in collaboration and purpose. As the night wore on, with the threat still simmering in the distance, he felt a deep satisfaction settling in. He had achieved clarity in his purpose and a sense of belonging he once believed unattainable. Now, with unwavering resolve, he prepared for the next battle. The balance would be delicate, but this was a challenge he welcomed. This was the moment for transformation, not only of the farm, but of his very existence. Embracing the turning tide, Jack could already begin to see the fruits of their labor, and he took a deep breath, ready to forge ahead into the future they were cultivating together. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about Jack's transformation. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring conclusion. You need to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share this.